I'm very happy to have Andy Gore with me now in this special Firefly Wave episode of the Firefly podcast. And you have to endure the English language because Andy is much more safe or feels much more safe to speak English. So I have to do the interview in English, which is no problem. And I think you will really enjoy the interview. First question, Andy, before we go into the game and in your position in the developer team, what does Firefly mean to you personally?
Well, first, before we get into that, I just want to respond to why I'm not doing this interview in German.
Okay.
I know just enough German to get slapped in a bar in the Reeperbahn. So,
okay.
So everybody will be happier if I speak English, especially my PR manager. So,
yeah, okay.
So I'm sorry. The question is, what drew me to Firefly?
Yeah. What does Firefly mean to you personally? The Firefly universe, the TV show.
Oh my God, that's a big question.
I know.
Well, a little bit of background. I actually own a company called Quantum Mechanix, or QMX. We have been a loyal licensee of Firefly / Serenity since 2005 when the company was formed. For a very long time, we were the only people making products for Firefly fans. I'm a big Browncoat. In fact, actually, the reason why I got involved in this company at the beginning was because I wanted to get the Serenity license and produce products for it.
Okay.
What Firefly means to me is it is, to me, the culmination of three things that I love in genre entertainment. It's about family. It's about breaking the rules. And it's about always just, the only thing standing between you and destruction is your wits. And I don't think any show ever did as good a job pulling those elements together as Firefly did.
Okay. So you're a dedicated fan. How often have you seen the episodes of Firefly?
Well, keep in mind now, I do product development for Firefly. So it's not an entirely fair question. Probably about 800 times.
Okay, you're really dedicated to Firefly.
I mean, I understand that we do things like we actually have part of the cool thing about working on the game is we managed to convince Fox to go back into the original film of the series. The studio keeps the film because that show was shot on film. Made a direct digital transfer for us. So we have these really, really, really super high res, super clean, all the original Foley audio, everything else, copies. And so it's like watching the series all over again, watching those copies. But we spent a lot of time going and looking. It's like, okay, there's the note that Mal took from the belly dancer in the bar, and can we get a close up of that? What does that look like? And so to say I've seen it 800 times, I've seen it 800 times piece by piece. In terms of actually sitting and watching it from beginning to end, I've probably done that 40 or 50 times.
Okay, and 800 times frame by frame.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so. You already said you're the head of Quantum Mechanix.
Yep.
You're at the top of the development of the Firefly Online game. Is that right?
Yes, I'm the executive producer, which basically means I'm the guy who writes the checks.
Okay. And you're the guy that hires everything. The actors, the programmers, the graphics, all that is your job.
All that. I also negotiated the studio rights to do the game. So yeah, I'm. If the buck stops anywhere, it's here.
Okay. How big is the team behind Firefly Online?
Well, it depends on what part of the development cycle. Right now, we have a very large team on it.
Okay.
The largest because we're getting fairly close to the first release. But probably we have about 40, 50 people total.
In our feeling and the things we can see from the game with the videos and information from the Cortex app, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Could you give us some insight in the idea behind Firefly Online? What's the general idea of the game? It's an online game, okay, but what will be the gaming dynamic? What will you do as a player in the game?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways to answer that question. Let me try to give you what I think will be the most valuable to your listeners. Are you a Fallout fan?
Yeah, I played Fallout. Yes,
I'm talking about old school Fallout. I'm not talking about first person. I'm talking about
the really old one. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
kind
I'm just sounding very young. I'm very old.
So, from a gameplay perspective, the game kind of has three modes that will feel familiar to people. There's a flight sim.
Okay.
Where you fly around the verse, and that to me feels a lot like Freelancer.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a mode of moving cargo and buying cargo and selling cargo and taking jobs and doing investigating derelicts and stuff like that. That part feels almost a little more like Masters of Orion to me. It's about the economics of the universe and getting you the resources you need to get a better ship, get a bigger crew, keep them happy, outfit your people and your ship, things like that. But in terms of play, the majority of your time will be spent in what we call the encounter engine. The encounter engine is it's how do I explain this so that it's really it's a 3D procedurally generated system. So in other words, when you visit a planet, in order to have hundreds of towns and environments that you could venture onto a planet, we use a fairly sophisticated procedural engine to generate those scenes. Obviously, there are scenes that we're handcrafting because Janestown needs to look like Janestown and things to that effect. But and if you go onto Niska Skyplex, it needs to look like it did on the show. But essentially, when you land on a planet, you can walk around, you can explore, you can go to the trading post, you can, to buy things that you need. You can go to the bar to try to hire people or get a job or just start a bar fight because it's Unification Day. The minute you get into a combat situation, we go to a turn-based system that's somewhat reminiscent of XCOM or it's more sophisticated than the third-person stuff that was done in Fallout, but to me, at some level, it sort of has that feel because it's sort of rough and tumble. There's a lot of humor in the way everything's written, just like there was in the show. But it's turn-based combat. Your crew's training is going to be important. How they feel about their captain is going to be important in terms of their performance, and of course, how they're outfitted will matter as well.
Okay, and will it be in an isometric view, or what will the engine look like?
Well, it's isometric as a default. However, like a lot of modern 3D turn-based strategy games, you can zoom in. I mean, you can effectively give yourself a first-person perspective if you want. I don't think the game is very playable that way because, one of the reasons why we decided not to do a first-person shooter, because we discussed it, and in some ways doing a first-person shooter is easier. We still have to build all these 3D environments. They still have to be incredibly detailed. The problem with a first-person shooter is it sort of violates, in my opinion, the spirit of the show.
Yeah.
Because the show really wasn't about Twitch. It wasn't about just shoot every single time. I mean, for the most part, it was about being clever, and it was about figuring a way out of situations. So almost every combat situation, except for one that I know of, there are ways that you can sort of talk your way out of it if you want to, or figure some clever way around combat. And then even if violence does ensue, the turn-based strategy allows you to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and you can be clever and strategic about the way you approach combat. But even more importantly, it allows for the crew dynamic, because to me, Firefly is about the crew. It's about the family. First-person shooters are about a person. I mean, yeah, you can have other people running around doing things, but to really feel like your crew matters to the outcome, you need more of a strategic turn-based approach to the game.
Can you tell something about the overall playtime that you're aiming for, or will it be an open-end game if it's successful and you will play forever?
Well, there's a bit of both. There is a story in the first release, which is where we brought in the voice actors. It's a little over, the script itself is a little over 100 pages, and that's just the cinematics. I would have to say that this is one of those games where you might be able to get through it in 20 hours, but you could probably also play it for 120 if you wanted to.
Okay.
There's just a whole lot to do. It is an open world system. So while there is a story you can follow at your own pace. So for example, there's some things that happen at the beginning. Everybody has to do stuff at the beginning because it kind of gets you set up for the game. And there's a lot of fun stuff in that too. I think people will enjoy. But there's a point at which you're sort of done with the first part of the game, and you're kind of free to do what you want. You can immediately move on to the story if that's your choice, or you can decide to fly around and do jobs and build up your resources. Maybe get a bigger ship, get a better crew. There's always the option to move on. The game does get tougher as you move on in the storyline. So. A certain amount of flying around and building up your crew and things like that is probably a good idea.
Okay. Will the verse in the game be identical to the verse map in the Cortex app, or will the verse in the game be bigger than the map you can see at the moment, the Cortex app?
Well, the verse is the verse. The map in the Cortex represents all the planets and moons that we know of from the show. Okay. However, when you're in the flight sim, it's going to be realistic. So, planets are not going to be right on top of each other. And you'll have to fly quite a ways to go from one planet to another, much less one star system to another. There will be a fast forward option because not everybody's going to want to dead stick it all over the verse, because that would actually take a lot of time. And then you'll have a version of the map of the verse. It'll be different than the one you see in the Cortex, but mostly similar. You'll go in there, and then what you can do is you can select your navigational path, and you can fast forward through it if you want to. But however, fast forwarding doesn't get you out of random encounters, so those will still happen.
So you will have fights in space as well.
You can be boarded by pirates. You can be attacked by reavers. The Alliance can try to indict your ship. So you better hope you have all legal cargo when that happens. I mean, it's yes, all those sort of things can and will happen. I think
sounds great.
Personally, for me, my favorite thing is being boarded, because that's when you go to the encounter map. Except the encounter map is your ship. You should fight people, fight off the borders. So,
and you will be able to buy a lot of ships in the game, spaceships.
It's interesting. Originally, we conceived it that it was like serial monogamy. You went from ship to ship. So, like, you had a little ship at the beginning, and then eventually you could save up enough money to get yourself a bigger ship and a bigger crew. And so you sell the old ship to help buy the new ship, and you can still do that. But in the early testing process, so many people told us that they actually want to have a collection of ships and they want to use them for different kinds of missions. We decided to add in a garage feature that's a little bit like GTA. Okay. So, for example, let's say you want to hang on to all your ships. We give you that option. Now, you can only fly one ship at a time, but all you have to do is go back to the shipworks where you left your last ship, and you can switch off if you want to.
So you can collect them all.
Yes, you can, absolutely. And you can upgrade them, which is a little like evolving. I never thought about it that way. Maybe we're just building Pokemon.
Yeah. So how is Firefly Online different from the other games you developed so far?
Well, it's the most ambitious game we've done.
Okay.
We've principally been focused on mobile. This is our first desktop game. Although actually the team we brought in has a ton of experience doing desktop. So, it's probably not accurate to say that our studio doesn't have experience doing this type of work, because the people focused on the game are actually quite experienced in that area. It's a big game. There's a lot in this game. And I mean, beyond just... one of the reasons why I kind of hate describing the game is I always leave stuff out, because it's impossible to describe all the things that you can do. For example, this is just a fun example because it's such a small thing, but I could see people losing hours on it. So when you get into a combat situation, assuming you win, of course, one of the things that you do is you go through the pockets of your defeated enemy, and you can take their money and you can take their kit, their equipment, their guns, and their whatever else that you're interested in. I suppose we should allow you to steal their boots too. When you get all their hardware back to your ship, one of the things you can do is you can decide to disassemble their weapons, and you can actually use the parts to build better weapons. So there's a whole thing. If you have a gunsmithing skill, you can actually go in and swap parts out. There's a whole 3D simulator that lets you go in and kind of pop parts off one gun and pop them onto another. And ultimately, you can actually craft better weapons and better equipment for yourself. So that's just one thing. Another thing you can do is, there's a map of the interior of your ship, and it has the obviously the command deck, and it has the galley, and it has the engine room, and the cargo bay, and of course your cabins. You can decorate it. You can get a rug for your cabin, or you can get a nice leather pilot's chair for the command deck, and so there's all these things that you could do.
I already own a flag I can use on my ship.
Oh yeah, you can totally hang the flag on the wall, one of the walls in your ship.
What are your experiences with the fan base so far?
Well, first of all, I'll say Browncoats are the best fans on Earth. I mean, at QMX we deal with a lot of different fan bases. Star Trek, Star Wars, DC, and I love the Browncoats are the best fans. For a whole variety of reasons. They love their show. They will respect you if you respect the material that you're doing. So all those things are and they're grateful. They're happy that somebody's taking their show seriously and doing cool stuff for it. When it comes to the game fans, they basically break down into two kinds of fans. There are Browncoats, and then there are game fans. The Browncoats love everything we're doing, and they just want us to do more and do it quicker. So no big surprise there. The game fans, they still haven't quite embraced it yet because it's just a little different than what they're accustomed to. And I personally think that's a good thing. We didn't set out to do a video game with the name Firefly on it. We set out to make a Firefly game. So a lot of what we're building is around the personality of the show. Even a decision not to do a traditional first-person shooter was really because we didn't think that Joss would like that. We really thought that that's not what he was doing with the show, and a game that did that would sort of not be true to the spirit of that. It wouldn't be an honest Firefly game. It would be an effort to make money off the Firefly brand with a traditional game that admittedly more gamers would understand.
Joss Whedon and Minear, are they in any way involved directly in the game? Do they know how the game looks now at the moment?
They are both aware. They're both very, very, very busy. So it wouldn't be fair to say that they're involved. They're not doing passes on the game and giving us creative feedback. Mostly because they just don't have the bandwidth. But they're both aware of the game. They're both happy that we're doing it, and we've been told to run with scissors, so that's what we're doing.
Okay. The latest news of the Firefly game on the Keep Flying website and in the Cortex app were that, Will Wheaton will be voicing the main character of the game, so the player will be voiced by Will Wheaton. And just Friday, there was a video that announced that Kelly Hu will voice one of the characters in the game. Could you give us another name, maybe?
I will give you all the names. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, great.
Okay, so so far, and remember, I think we're pretty much all done now with voiceover for the initial release. Nathan Fillion came back to do Mal. Adam Baldwin came back to do Mal. He also does another character as well. Alan Tudyk came back to do Wash, and he also does a pretty major bad guy and does a fabulous job with it. Okay. Marina Baccarin came back. Joel State came back. Summer Glau came back. Ron Glass came back. Sean Maher came back. The only person we have not recorded for version 1 of the game is Gina Torres, and it's just been a scheduling issue. She's been, you may have noticed, she's been insanely busy. And up in Canada, and it's just been, we've tried to make the schedules work, but it just hasn't worked out. So hopefully we'll get her in the next version. But we would never, ever bring in another actor to play any of the big game heroes. It has to be the original cast, or we're not interested in doing it. So we have Michael Fairman, who played Niska.
Yeah,
and
great.
Niska for us, and did a wonderful job. We have Michael Dorn, who came to play a new character, an Alliance officer that seemed appropriate.
Okay.
We have Kelly Hu, who's playing we decided that we want to be selective with how many of the recurring characters we bring back at once. We decided for version 1 of the game we'd bring back Michael Fairman because he fits the story really well. But the next version we might have Mark Shepard come back. But the thing is, we also want to make sure there are new characters coming into the verse And so Kelly is actually playing a competing crime lord on Persephone.
Oh, great. Yeah, okay.
And she is everything the Badger isn't, and vice versa.
Oh, great. Okay.
So she's a lot of fun. She's a very, very, and Kelly's a wonderful lady, and she did an amazing job with the character. I mean, just really everything we'd hoped it would be. She did a great job. Let's see, who else? I'm probably missing somebody, and they're going to be mad at me later. There are a bunch of new characters being introduced who you may not be familiar with the actors who are playing them, but they're doing a wonderful job with it. Also, at one point we were not going to voice the player characters, principally for this whole idea that, regardless of how you feel about the actor playing it, a lot of people, they want to have the voice in their head. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because Firefly Online has a brand new Firefly story, and it's a big one. And because there's a lot of cinematic stuff going on in the game, there's a lot of, frankly, there's hours and hours and hours of dialogue. It just seemed weird for us not to give players the option to have a person play their character when they're interacting with Mal, or they're interacting with Niska, or they're interacting with Whisper Lopan, or any of the other new characters.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, we opted to add voice talent to play the female and male leads. For the female, we have Courtney Taylor, who you will know. I think probably her most famous role, she played Jack on Mass Effect.
Yeah,
and we just finished recording her. She was fabulous.
Great, yeah,
amazingly good job. And we have Will Wheaton coming in to do the male player character. Now, for what it's worth, if you are a player who doesn't want us to define your voice in the game, you can turn them off. You don't have to listen to them. It's just, believe me, for some of the cinematic scenes, you want somebody acting those voices.
Yeah.
It just seems odd to have everybody else talking, and then when you come to the player character, all you see are words on the screen.
Great staff of voice actors you've collected there. Can you give us an approximate timetable? I have to ask. When will the first version of the game be available to players?
Well, we officially announced spring.
Okay.
Personally, I think we're about 90 days out. So I think we're end of May.
Okay.
And the question right now is, we have to see how game development today is very different than it was, years ago, where you would actually sort of build up a code base. Now these days, what happens is every part of the game is built separately, and then at one point, what you do is you put all the modules together, and you see how they click. So there's an engine that generates the procedural encounter engine. There's the engine that manages character customization. There's an engine that manages flight, and then what you do is they all plug in together. It's a little bit like a modular home. You're never 100% sure how it's all going to go together until you actually arrive at your destination and put all the pieces together.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of what we are, where we're at right now. Is we're putting all the modules are getting close to being done, and now everything gets plugged in together. Depending on how we feel about it when everything is all together, is we may release it. We will definitely release it on time, but we might decide to release it as early access, and just so that we're very straight with people about what their gaming experience is going to be.
Okay. Will it be worldwide release, or will there any regions be delivered first? Or
well, so far we have been sticking to a strategy of worldwide release, all platforms simultaneous. We did that with the Cortex. Good learning experience, by the way, to do with that with the Cortex, was that it gave us a good sense of how hard it'll be to do with the game. And it is harder. Believe it or not, the biggest issue is every platform has a different review process, and they never ever finish at the same time.
Yeah.
So like with the first release of the Cortex, Apple was like 2 weeks late on approval, and everything else was done for weeks. But Apple they were fussing over. I don't even remember what it was anymore. There was a pixel they didn't like. Now this time out with this next big release we've got coming, it's Android who's the one who's fussing because they're changing their memory management system for downloads. So, that's going to be the challenge with the game. But we feel very strongly that it's important to release on all platforms simultaneously.
Which are all platforms? Could you tell on which platforms Firefly Online will be released?
Yeah, we're releasing on Steam for Mac and PC.
Yeah.
We are releasing on the App Store for iOS, and we are releasing on Google Play for Android.
Okay. So it will play on an iPhone as well, or just on iPad?
Your game experience will be much better on an iPad than an iPhone,
Yeah.
but it will work on an iPhone. I will say this, that the 3D engine is pretty powerful, and so, it may not play great on your iPhone 4.
Okay.
We're still determining where we're going to set the bar in terms of downloads. But it's funny, we have people on the Android who are complaining that we're not supporting Android 1.
Okay. And will the versions be compatible? Will you be able to play on the road with your iPad and come home and play on your desktop PC or Mac and they will synchronize? Or you have to choose one platform to play?
Absolutely, they will be all platforms simultaneous. That was one of our key initial architectural goals, is we wanted people to play on their platform of choice whenever they wanted to and pick up exactly where they left off. So, if you're at the office and you're playing on your PC and you get home and you want to play on your iPad or your Nexus tablet, or you're sitting in the car and you're bored and you just want to check in on your captain with your iPhone, all those things should be possible, and they are. One of the nice things about getting the Cortex out the door is it gave us a chance to really, one of the sort of the little secrets of the Cortex is that is actually the same database that the game runs on. So it gives us the chance to, really make sure that database is rock solid for months before the game comes out.
What kind of pricing model will the game have? Will it be a freemium game, or will you have to pay for the game and then pay a monthly subscription fee? Could you tell us something about that?
The game is a premium game, so it will be paid once, play as much as you want. We are considering on platforms that support it, possibly doing like a free launch weekend. Kind of like Steam lets you do this. We can make the game free for like 2 days, and then at the end of it, you have to pay for it if you want to play it. So I still like the idea of getting as many people in the game as possible, but we promised the marketplace we would be a premium game and not do freemium. And honestly, the style of gaming that we have, freemium doesn't make sense for it anyway. We would have to, for the same reason we didn't want to do a first-person shooter, because it didn't make sense in terms of the personality of the show, the storytelling. Freemium wouldn't make sense for this kind of gameplay. Now, there will be DLC that we will offer. We already have a few modules in the works. Those will be additional charge, but those will be new stories, new performances from the actors, things like that. So, and they'll be at reasonable prices, and you certainly don't need to download them. The Cortex will continue to have some light freemium elements to it, but again, nothing that happens in the Cortex will give you an advantage in gameplay. It gives you bragging rights. You want to put flames on your ship and then go fly around in Firefly Online and have other players see the flames on your ship. Then that's the kind of level of stuff we're talking about.
Okay. Do you have any price you can announce for the game?
It will. I don't want to announce the pricing yet, mostly because we don't have final approval from the studio.
Okay.
But our goal is to actually make the freemium price pretty low, comparatively speaking. And the reason for this is one of the things that we were really dedicated to this idea of all platform play. The idea that you could be on this platform, that platform, and you can pick up your game on whatever device whenever you wanted to. We really felt like that was something very, very important we wanted to do. The downside of that is that the platforms don't allow you to unlock versions on their platform. So in other words, if we charge you $50 for the game, I can't give you all the platforms because you have to pick a platform to pay for it. It's like you have to pay for it on Steam. So if you pay $50 on Steam, then you're still going to have to go buy it on iOS and Android and so forth, and that just didn't seem fair. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into market with a dramatically lower premium price, so that we understand the fact that people will want to buy on multiple platforms, and so they're not paying us hundreds of dollars just because they want to play on their iPhone and on their PC.
Sounds fair.
Well, that was the goal. Ultimately, we're doing the whole reason why we decided to do this, and is we've been waiting for a Firefly game for a long time. And many people have come into the market and promised it and then never did anything. And we finally got to the point after the last sort of major disappointment that we were like, look, somebody needs to just shut up and do it. So that's what we decided. If we didn't do it, no one else would. And we're the largest, QMX is the largest licensee of Firefly. The fan base has been very good to us. And so this is kind of how we pay it forward. This ultimately, we view this as our gift to all the Browncoats who have supported QMX in our efforts over all these years. So it doesn't make sense for us to gouge people if that's our goal.
Well, it sounds fair, and you have a very happy Browncoat on the other side of the line at the moment. Could you tell us, there was an announcement that there will be the second card pack for the Cortex app available around the end of February. Which is now kind of there. We're in March. When will be the update for the Cortex app available?
Okay, so here's what's going on with that, and you get to have the breaking news because I was planning on publishing this later today.
Okay.
So we have several versions. They're all worked on at the same time. Okay, and so originally the plan was to do a 2.02 and a 2.03 in fairly close succession. We were all set to release it at the end of last week, and then Android changed the memory management module process for downloading. And we thought about releasing everything but Android, but then we figured all the Android people get really pissed, because they couldn't get the version and everybody else would be doing it. And that didn't feel right to us. So we've been working on fixing the memory module, changing the way the memory downloads into the Android device. And what we realized was that 2.03 was going to end up being done a week after 2.02. Mm-hmm. And there's a real issue in our business because we like to keep everybody be on the same version, and the versions are free. But the problem is people just don't download them, and there's still a lot of people out there, and we can kind of see what people are running on the database. And there are a lot of people out there that are still on version 2.0.
Okay.
And so what we decided to do was to combine 2.02 and 2.03. So you're going to get the Series 2 card packs. Also, we're upgrading the card game a little bit. There's going to be some new features in there that we think you guys will like. But then we're also going to be adding on the ship customizer. And so that's all going to come out one unified release in about 2 weeks.
Oh, great.
By the way, I'll give you a little tip. If you've been one of those people who's been selling your extra cards, you might want to stop.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm collecting the closed crates at the moment. Will it be possible to wait for the update and then open the crates and get the new cards?
Yes, you can. Although, actually, what we're going to do is originally we were going to shut down Series 1 with Series 2. But we heard from a bunch of people who felt like, but then I feel all this pressure to do this and do that. And so what we're actually getting, it took a little extra time to add this feature. But when you do your trade route, or when you open a crate, or when you even buy a card pack, we'll give you the option to buy against Series 1 or Series 2.
That's really fair.
Well, again, we're not here to pick people's pockets. We're here to create a fun experience. And frankly, you guys are kind of, in a way, beta testing the game already. You just don't realize it. I'll tell you a funny thing. When you're in there flying a trade route, your ship shows up in the free flight module in the alpha of the video game.
Okay.
Because again, you're all operating off the same database. So when you're popping around on the map of the version, going from planet to planet, I can actually see your ship if I'm in the right place at the right time, flying around in the free flight engine.
Okay. How many people are flying around in the Cortex app at the moment? You have a number on that?
A lot.
Okay.
At any given point in time, there's tens of thousands of people in there.
Okay. Sounds good. What will be the possibilities of interact with other players in the game? If I'm understanding it right, it will be a single-player game, but it will be an online game. So you will be able to interact with other players. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. And you'll be able to interact with them in a number of ways, some of which we are still fine-tuning right now. But we will give you the ability to. It's interesting. When we first announced the game, we told everybody you'd play captain. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to be an engineer, or I want to be, the doctor, or something like that." And we get that, but the reality is, at the end of the day, the captain's the one who makes the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think captains would have a very, very hard time. Everybody who gets a ship would have a very hard time getting enough other players to play crew to really fill out the ship complement you need to be successful. So that's the reason why in version 1, everybody plays a captain and all crew members are NPCs. However, we understand that what people are looking for, and this is a key element of Firefly, is they want to build families. They want to build social connections. Uh-huh. So there will be the ability to to actually build a list of captains that you're friends with. And this will open up a lot of possibilities in the game. I mean, it can be anywhere from asking for an assist to, landing on a planet where one of your friends has done the crappy town module, and when you walk through town, you'll see their statue in town, of their avatar, and things like that. And so there are some other elements of that we're working on, but there will be the ability to create real social connections in the game between other captains who are playing that and eventually we may open up the possibility of creating a ship where people play different crew members. We know that's something people want to do, and so I think that's on the long-term plan. Beyond that, though, you will be able to get jobs from other players.
Okay.
So a player can decide that they really want a pile of Hanencourt compensators, and so they're willing to pay you or trade with you to go get those for them. And so you'll see those jobs appear on the job board. One of the things that we may add to the Cortex down the road is an actual job creator that will allow players who are at a certain level to be able to actually create stories that other people can play in the game.
Oh, great.
So that's another thing. And that's another way in which, again, the Cortex will be for the hardcore, really dedicated players. The other thing that can happen is that through a variety of circumstances, you can end up fighting with another captain's crew.
Okay.
Now, it can be because you both are trying to salvage the same derelict, or it could be because you had a crew member who didn't like you and quit your crew, and they hired them and they brought on a revenge mission. So there will be PvP. It will not be real-time PvP because that's too hard to coordinate in a turn-based game. So the computer will play the crew of the other player, but still it means that you'll actually get a chance to test your crew against the crew of other players in the game. So there will be a variety of ways in which that can happen.
Sounds terrific. Well, last question, Andy. You already mentioned for 2 or 3 times that this will be the first version of the game.
Yes.
1.0 version of the game. Since you have to plan ahead a lot in the gaming industry, how many versions are already planned, if not already started programming? Could you give us some perspective in the future?
Well, there are 4 DLC. There are 4 new adventures that are already planned, and in fact, actually, the voice work has already been recorded for them. Okay. So those ones are pretty solid. The changes in the game system itself, we're making sure that the conduit is there, so we can plug in new functionality. So for example, expanding PvP, creating a ship as a guild kind of idea, so multiple players can play on the same ship. All the sort of fundamental work for that's been put in place. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to be done to really make it playable and usable by players. But I would say we have enough stuff to keep us busy for about a year and a half. And then at the end of that, we have it in our minds to release one of the things we want to do is we want to let players play around in the verse. And assuming that people like the game, that it does well, financially. And by the way, when I say it does well financially, I think our goals are modest compared to most gamers. Most games release. We're not looking to make tens of millions of dollars off of this. We want it to be self-sustainable. And to me, that's 100,000 active players. If there are 100,000 people playing this game on a regular basis, that's more than enough to support further game development. One of the things that we've been talking about a lot is we know in the universe of Firefly there's no ship-to-ship combat, and that makes sense. That's you're in a time when the war's been lost and there's this big federation-like alliance with all the power and it's just like if you put a machine gun on your car, you'd probably get arrested. Probably putting a big gun on your ship would get you arrested too. in the verse. However, there is a time when that wasn't true. And I think for the down the road big release, the thing that we would do next after the main game is released in terms of a big new thing, is I think we would add on a Independence War module.
Great.
Where you could go back and you could actually fight the war.
Whoa. That sounds really, really interesting.
Well, we've already kind of figured out how to do it.
Okay.
It's ambitious. There's a lot of work involved. So the best thing I can say is, if you want to see that kind of stuff happen, support the game. We will definitely do that. I think we're also looking at something in the nearer term where we might allow you to play a bounty hunter instead of a ship's captain. I think that would be the next big thing that we might add to the game.
So there are a lot of plans for the future of Firefly Online, and you already gave some end statements, but for the end of the interview, you have any message to all the German, specifically Browncoats out there, something you just want to say to them?
Yes, I do. Get all your friends, get all your family, get everybody you know, and maybe even a few people you don't know to watch the show. Efforts like ours are based on the reason why a game exists for a show that was on the air 13 years ago and only lasted half a season is because of the fans, because of the passion of the fans, because fans have been great about making new fans. And so if you want to help us, the best way you can do that is help Firefly. Help make more Firefly fans in Germany. It's a wonderful show. You're doing them a favor. And that would be my message. That's the reason why we're creating the game. We're creating the game so that there's a platform for telling new Firefly stories. All the actors have said that they enjoyed doing this, that they would be thrilled to come back and do it again. This may be, at least until at such a point that Joss can come back and do more stories, this may be one of our platforms for telling more Firefly stories and getting to hear the actors play those parts again. And the best way you can support that is by making more Firefly fans.
Andy, thanks a lot for your time, for doing this interview for the Firefly podcast here in Germany. And I wish you all the best for the game. Good luck. And we all hope here on our side that you will get the 100,000 players, that the game will be sustained a long, long time, and that we can play the Independence War in Firefly Online. Andy, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex.